Welcome. We're just going to hang on for about a minute or so and just make sure we kind of let everyone have time to join us, and then we will kick into our webinar today. So grab a cup or a drink. Just give it another few seconds. I think most people have joined now. All right, we've plateaued off. Oh, we've got another couple of people. All right, so I think we will kick in. It looks like we've got nearly everyone joined that's registered. Okay, well, welcome. Welcome everybody. Thank you for taking the time out today to join us for our pipeline recruitment webinar. So we're going to delve into the amazing world of pipelines today. And for some of you, you may already be using pipelines in your organization, and for others, you might be intrigued and maybe looking at starting out using pipelines. So we're going to try today and just cover off the baseline of what pipeline recruitment is, how it's best used within SnapHire. And then we've also going to dive into some case studies and work within the system as well to show you how it actually looks and how it possibly could be set up. So starting out, let's do some introductions. So I'm Melissa, one of the client success, client relationship managers for ATL and SnapHire. On the line with me as well, we've got Jess, who is in our client success team, and Shipper, who's in our SnapHire recruitment team, formerly known as ATL Assist, for those of you who have used the service before. So just a little bit of a background. We'll go quickly through this. So ATL is our parent company. We've got two products, SnapHire, which we're all using, and we've got the SnapHire Marketplace, which is powered by the Talent App Store. So for a lot of you now, we should have seen that we've got the SnapHire Marketplace within SnapHire when you log in. If you have any questions about that as well, please do contact us and we can work talk through any questions that you have. But it's a really good pop in there, have a look, and it'll give you good detail around what's available in the SnapHire Marketplace now. So as most of you will be familiar, SnapHire is extremely configurable and flexible, and we are supported, and you are supported by our client success team. We've got SnapHire Recruit, as I mentioned. Shipper is here joining us today. SnapHire Recruit is formerly ATL Assist, so you may be familiar with ATL Assist more so. We are now known as SnapHire Recruit, and Shipper will talk today a little bit about more about what they do. And then we've got our SnapHire Studio team, so that's our web design team that take care of your careers website needs. So again, we're working through about nearly over 200 businesses across New Zealand and Australia, and we're also based in the USA. So some key points, just making sure that you stay up to date with what we've gone on. Obviously, we're running all these webinar series now, so make sure you check out our webinars on our events page on atl.com. Make sure you're signed up to our newsletter as well, so you can hear about what we've got going on and any events. And we do a lot of partner webinars as well, so definitely stay tuned to that. So and make sure that you join our SnapHire community forum as well on LinkedIn. It's a great place to engage with some of our other customers, ask some questions. We'll obviously jump in there as well, answer them for you. It's a great opportunity to kind of build that community of SnapHire users. Cool. So our agenda today, we're going to give you a pipeline overview, so covering what pipelines are, looking at when you could use pipelines within your organization, the kind of nitty-gritty around how they actually work, and what those benefits are to you and your organization as well in recruitment. We're going to talk a little bit about some of the kind of key questions that we get asked around pipelines and child jobs. And obviously throughout this webinar, if you have any questions yourself, please jot them down, fire them through to us, and we'll be happy to answer. If there's any ones you can't think of right now, you think of later, just flick us through an email to our client success team, and we'll be able to support you. And then we'll cover through any additional support in using pipelines as well at the end. Okay. So a bit of an overview. The kind of premise of pipelines is really creating a talent pool of candidates. It is, like creating a job within SnapHire, you create a pipeline job, and based off that, then you have child jobs. So we'll talk a little bit about this in more detail. it's an extremely proactive recruitment model. So it's all about getting candidates in and screened and ready for roles that potentially maybe not advertised or you're ready to recruit for now. But when you're ready to recruit for those jobs and those roles, you will ideally already have a pre-screened qualified talent pool of candidates that you can send to manage. So really proactive. The other thing as well, it requires additional user permissions. Again, that's just a conversation with the person who has the admin access in SnapHire, or a conversation with our team as well. So how does a pipeline work? As I mentioned, we've got a pipeline job and a trial job. So a pipeline job is, think of it as an expression of interest. It's not an actual real role. It's, as I said, an expression of interest. You've got a role up online. Candidates can apply to say that they're interested in working for your company, potentially within a department or a sector. And it gives you the opportunity to then determine what roles those candidates may be actually suitable for. And that's where it comes down into that child job piece. So on the pipeline, again, it gives you an opportunity to build a talent pool of pre-screened candidates. So you're pre-screening to a point on the pipeline, so that expression of interest, and looking at those candidates that are potentially suitable for the organization or not suitable for the organization, and might be suitable for certain roles that you recruit for. The child job is the actual real position. So that's that, you know, sales manager role within a particular region. So that real role that the manager is recruiting for. And ideally based off the pipeline of those pre-screened candidates that you've got, the people that are qualified for, say, a sales role or a managerial role will be readily available for those child job positions as they become available, for then you to continue your recruitment process to the end. Again, we'll go into a little bit more detail in this, and we'll hop into the system and have a look. So really, are pipelines right from organization? A question we get asked all the time. So here's some questions that we're going to put to you. So are you screening candidates all the time, over and over again, for similar roles? Are you constantly maybe struggling to recruit for maybe some similar hard to fill roles? Or have you got those last minute roles that pop in and you're scrambling to advertise, recruit? Or do you constantly recruit for roles, say for seasonal roles, so Christmas recruitment, summer recruitment, and are you constantly doing that year in, year out, having to kind of start from scratch each year? And pipelines absolutely will benefit you, and we'll tell you why. So let's fire through to the next one. So again, let's touch on the benefits for candidates. So candidate applies for a role once, one application on that pipeline, that main role, and they can be, you as a recruiter in the HR will actually deem them being suitable for different roles within the organization. So rather than a candidate going and applying for 10 different separate roles, they get to put their best application forward, and they only apply once. And they can be screened and considered for multiple roles across the organization that maybe they aren't even aware of themselves. So again, really nice in that sense. They only have to participate in, say, one initial screen, and then be considered for that child role. And it gives them an ability, as I said, to kind of express interest for a particular role, or maybe multiple roles within your organization. The benefits then for a recruiter. So again, you are screening a candidate once, rather than having a candidate apply for 10 roles, having to screen them for 10 different roles, very time consuming. We're screening them once, and then we have the power as well then to be able to deem whether we think they're suitable, one, for our organization, and then two, for maybe different roles that we have based on their skill set. And that's obviously based in and around those additional screens that you're going to do, be it phone screen or a video screen or an online screen. It kind of ensures like a consistency of flow and applications as well. It reduces the time that you are spending on screening candidates. And it does allow you to also be able to kind of really highlight and mark candidates too for different roles within the organization. So again, those hard to fill roles, you see somebody coming through that you can define a good skill set. As I said, they may not be aware that this role exists, or that it's they potentially might be viable for it, but it gives you an opportunity again to be in that driver's seat a bit more. And again, really proactive and helps as well to reduce on budget and advertising costs. And again, that time to hire as well, because we're looking at the proactive recruitment strategy. And then when we look at the benefits then for managers, for hiring managers, I think the biggest thing that we kind of come across, it's the efficiency and the quickness in the hire. So if we already have a pre-screened qualified group of candidates, that hiring manager goes, hey, role ready to go, and you potentially sitting there going, right, well, I've actually got 5 pre-screened candidates sitting here ready for you to go. Great, let's get them straight into that interview stage, rather than having to sit there going, okay, let's advertise this individual role, let's wait for those applications to come through. You may have a 2-week period where you have to wait for applications to come through, then let's start screening those candidates. Yes, you may have to do that in certain roles, but this is a great opportunity to have that really proactive opportunity to already have pre-screened candidates. And there we go for the managers again. So it's probably, I think the time to hire and the quickness in getting candidates through is a huge benefit for managers. Right, so we're going to go into some case studies, which I think is quite exciting. I'm going to hand over to Shipra. I said Shipra sits within our SnapHire recruitment team. I'll let her talk a little bit more what they do after, and she's going to go through some case studies for clients that they've actually been working on using pipelines. Over to Shipra.
Wonderful, thank you, Mel. So the first case study is about how we can hire and process candidates faster by the use of pipelines. So this is about speed. For one of our clients, we used a very high volume pipeline job to encompass 80+ locations in New Zealand, looking for full-time, part-time, fixed-term roles and casual positions. So once the hiring manager's job request has been approved, we would then open up a child job in SnapHire, and we would have candidates to review straight away to see if they are interested to progress into the interview stage. This is a really proactive way of recruiting. It's extremely efficient, as there's no wait time for candidates to apply for the role, as we have already pre-screened candidates, keeping them warm and then filtered through so that we can put them through immediately. Because of the use of pipeline, we've been able to open and close roles within the same day. And that's it's definitely a big thing for recruiters as well to be able to do that in some circumstances. The next case study that we will be talking about is cost. So cost is definitely one of the things that everyone looks at. So for one of the cases, we've had to hire 110 full-time, 40 part-time, and 10 casual staff for a new operation in Tauranga within a very short period of time. We needed to hit those numbers of the operations, otherwise we wouldn't be able to go live. So we were given a budget of $30,000 for advertising, and it was imperative that we report back to the client on a weekly basis with the exact number of candidates that were being processed for each employment type. We advertised the one pipeline role and opened up 3 different child jobs. So one was full-time, part-time, and casual role in SnapHire. We saved costs in terms of advertising the one role instead of having 3 different jobs, which meant that we were able to think outside the box and get creative with that advertising strategy to overcome the intense sourcing issue. Moving on to our third case study, which is user experience. Now, for one of our cases, we had to go through and make sure that for our pipeline, this is to do with Christmas campaigns, we had to employ casual staff over the holiday period. Now, most of the time, we would also hold group interviews to handle the sheer volume of candidates being processed at this time. So the hiring managers will let us know after group interviews which candidates they think would be best suited for which store and have store rankings. We're then able to shift those candidates into the specific child jobs and continue with the pre-employment checks without the candidates having to apply for multiple roles or for us having to manually transfer over their details to the necessary store managers. So this maneuvering of the candidate into other jobs takes seconds, and it's a better experience for the candidates, the hiring managers, and for the recruiters as well. So these case studies are prime examples of how you can hire faster, save on cost, and yet provide a good experience. Great, over to you, Jess.
Cool. Thanks, Shipra. Cool, so now we're going to jump into our demo site. So a lot of you may already be using pipelines in your SnapHire systems, but if you aren't already using pipelines and you're interested in starting to use pipelines, you do first of all need a permission to get you started. So I'll just bring up my user account. So to get started, you do need this permission can create pipeline jobs. This permission grants users the abilities to create pipeline parent jobs, and the menu option create new pipeline job becomes available. So that's this one up here. So if you haven't already started using pipelines and you are interested in getting started, definitely have a chat to our client success team before you do create a pipeline for the first time. Your workflow that you're already using may work well with pipeline recruitment, but there may be a few things that you want to tweak and possibly create a custom workflow for your pipeline recruitment. Cool, so we'll just quickly create a new pipeline role. So I'll do customer service opportunities. Oops, can't spell this morning. Oops. We'll just go customer service roles, much easier. Cool, so obviously this is a demo site, so all of the fields here are just example fields, but you need to select your job family and workflow selections. So if you do have a pipeline workflow or a volume workflow, that's where you would make that selection up here. So I'm going to select permanent and volume. We've got a country selection, so I'll just quickly make some selections here. Categories is where you definitely need to think about how you want your pipeline to match. So when candidates apply for your pipeline, they're going to make some profile search agent category selections, and this will determine how candidates will filter down onto your child jobs. So with business group, this is primarily used for reporting purposes, and generally you don't report on your, sorry, I just need to move my Zoom thing. Normally you don't really report on your pipeline role, as it's not really a real role that you're going to hire candidates on. It's more that you're going to report on your child jobs, but make a selection there. And then obviously you need to make some selections in your profile search agent categories. So for this example, I'm creating a customer service role, and I'm just going to select one value in the expertise category. That means that this is not going to be a filter. So if a candidate applies and selects something different, for example, they select contact center, that's not going to affect their filtering down onto a child job. They're always going to appear on any child job that you create from this pipeline. The next one's location.
Yes, so just a question there. So I guess primarily, just as an example, what would be the key categories that clients would use as a filtering option?
Very often it's location. So a common scenario is that you've got a lot of the same roles, but based across New Zealand or across a region perhaps. So you would often have location as one of your filters. So candidates can apply for the expression of interest and then select the locations they're interested in, and then they'll filter down onto those pipeline roles. But clients do use pipelines for lots of different types of roles. So we've got clients that use them for in sort of medical roles, retail roles, sort of fruit picking for seasonal work, bus drivers. So it is different for different types of scenarios, but if you are creating a role for the first time, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to the client success team. We can definitely help you figure out how you want your pipeline to filter.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
So next I'm going to select my work type. For this customer service role, I'm going to select all of the work types except for contractor. And because I've got multiple selections in this category, my pipeline is also going to filter on work type. So I'm going to click save and move to the next one. I'll just pop in some text in there. And we'll just have a quick chat about questions. So because you're creating an expression of interest role, generally you'll get lots of applications to your role. So you definitely want to make sure that you're setting it up with some good questions right from the get-go. When you first send out your job alert for your pipeline, and if you've got lots of locations and work types selected, your job alert may go out to thousands of candidates, and you may get a huge influx of candidates applying. So you want to make sure that your questions are set up right from the start, and you've got some good questions that will help you screen efficiently. One good one that I think the SnapHire Recruit team find really helpful is soundbite.
Absolutely. The soundbite questions can be really great for customer service roles or roles where you do have a high volume, so that you are able to screen out those candidates that are not suitable. So we do use that quite a lot. just while you're on that as well, Jess, we also use knockout questions because we feel that knockout questions can save a lot of time. So this could be work type or work eligibility or a qualification as well.
Yeah, definitely.
And as Jeff mentioned, like it potentially, like we've got clients, and obviously with the SnapHire recruit team as well, that can get like hundreds of applications a day, and obviously needing to stay on top of those as well. So if you can reduce, as I said, using these particular screening tools and questions, and potentially a knockout question, is going to reduce that screening, and obviously automate some of the process for you. So the knockout question, as an example, is, as Shipra mentioned, say for instance, a work eligibility. So for this particular role, if it is a requirement that somebody has to have a work visa, so you're not going to support work visas, you have a question of, you know, do you have, you know, are you eligible to work in New Zealand? Yes, no. If somebody selects no, that's potentially that knockout question. Now, with the knockout questions, it sounds a bit severe sometimes. It doesn't actually automatically decline someone. They get an email. It will move them into the decline later bucket. So again, just making sure that that's all set up correctly for you. And then it allows you then to go and process those declines at a later stage, because obviously we don't want to be declining somebody straight away as they just apply for a role. But again, it can be such a useful tool for those really high volume recruitment.
Yeah, definitely. Once you've got your questions set up and you want to make sure that the answers come into your bucket views when you're reviewing, especially your incoming list of candidates, you can click on Manage Bucket Views, find the bucket view for the incoming bucket, and just pop any questions that you've created into your bucket view so that they appear when you're reviewing your incoming candidates. Also really, really important, if you are creating new questions, definitely try the questions out as if you were a job seeker, just making sure that you're comfortable with the mandatory settings and how it works. So just click on these links down the bottom here. Cool, so we'll just quickly move through the rest of the job wizard as it's just like creating a normal job. So you'll just work through your normal job wizard there. One other thing in the job wizard that might be useful is possibly setting up a custom application acknowledgement email for your pipeline roles. So some of our customers have specific wording around processing timelines or information about when they should expect to hear back in their standard application acknowledgement email, and that might not be appropriate for pipeline positions. So you can have a application acknowledgement email selection, and you can have specific wording for your pipeline acknowledgement emails if you wish. Cool, so I'll just save and finish this one. Cool, so now we've got our job in the draft status. You can see your job as a pipeline because you've got this little pipe down here. And it says this job is a pipeline. Job seekers from here will be matched with child jobs based on location and work type. And those are the categories where I made multiple selections. So once you're ready, you can open your pipeline and advertise it. With the application close date and time, you might want to just leave that blank if you are keeping your pipeline up on your career site ongoing. Shipra, I think you're doing seasonal recruitment. Do you add a close date for those ones?
So usually when we do have volume recruitment, like expression of interest roles open, we do have it open for a very long time. So we don't tend to put an application date. However, when we are doing seasonal recruitment, like Christmas time, we do have because it's a fixed term position, we would go ahead and we would add a close date for these roles.
Yeah. Cool. So when you've got your pipeline open and advertised, it will be on your careers website. So we've got an example here, one we created earlier, just a call centre expression of interest, and we've got our apply options available. I guess just with your advert text, you might want to think about including some additional information to kind of give the candidate a bit of context around what they're applying for and what to expect. So in this ad, we've just put some text in there. By expressing your interest in call centre positions with us, you'll become part of our call centre talent pipeline and be the first to hear about new positions when they become available. You only need to apply once to be considered for multiple opportunities. Our process includes a phone interview, background checks, and in-person interviews. And please note, if the location and work type that you're registering for doesn't immediately have any available positions, you may not hear back from us straight away, but we will be in touch to give you an update soon. So you don't have to include that kind of information, but it might be helpful to, I guess, just set the scene for your candidates.
Absolutely, because
Yeah.
because what happens a lot of the times is that because it is the expression of interest, candidates still have that expectation that you will get back in touch with them after X amount of time. So having that text in there, it just adds on as well, so that they have that expectation and they are aware that it is expression of interest role, and that candidates will get in touch as there are suitable positions available.
And as Jess mentioned before as well, like customizing that acknowledgement email, again, you can reiterate that within that email too. So again, they're seeing, they may not read all the way to the bottom on the careers website, but again, putting in that email as well. So creating that separate one could be really good. Just one other thing to note as well. So when a candidate applies for a pipeline, they can only apply once. So if they go to try and apply again, they won't be able to. So just to note that as well. So you may want to maybe put some text in around that as well. Because sometimes I think potentially maybe some questions you get fielded through as well, Shipper, just in and around, why can't I apply again? Or I don't have the apply option. And that is the reason why. Again, it's just giving them that option to apply for the job once. And again, reducing your screening as well.
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. One thing we do get asked quite often is how can I make my categories display better on my job advert? So you can see here we've got lots of locations selected, and it's not a nice presentation there. It's like lots of values, and in some cases it may be much worse than that. If you do have that situation and you want to make it look nicer, our web team can actually change it to show multiple locations instead. So we're just looking at the Glassons Careers website now, and we've got multiple locations listed there. And if we look at their actual job advert, we've got locations, multiple locations listed. And if you click on it, then it will open up and you can see all of the locations available for that pipeline. So if you are interested in that, just just send us through an email at hello@airtel.com, and our web team can add that for you. Just something else to think about as well is if you are creating a pipeline and it's open on your careers site all year round, if it's a normal role, it will fall to the bottom of your open jobs list, assuming that your jobs are automatically displayed with most recent first. So something to think about is maybe promoting your job ad in a different way on your career site. If you wanted to, you could have it set up as a featured role where it's sat at the top of your career site, or you could have it as a tile on the side, or depending on how your career site looks, you can have it in various different ways, but just as a, I guess, way to highlight it to your job seekers so they don't have to go searching for it.
And I guess that featured role as well can be used for any role that you're advertising as well, just to note.
Yeah, definitely. Another thing is as well, if it is a campaign, we do get some clients using pipelines for new store openings or a new opportunity at a different location. You can set up a microsite as well, and that would, you could have different information and potentially other roles associated with that pipeline available on your microsite to help promote it. If anyone does have any questions, definitely feel free to send them through. Cool, so now we will jump in and have a look at a pipeline we've already created. Cool, so this is our call center expression of interest role. You can see here we've got our big pipe. So you can see that's our pipeline role. And with this workflow, the buckets on the pipeline are our incoming shortlist, our AC, so that's assessment centre. So candidates are doing an assessment centre on the pipeline before they move down onto a child job. So we've got 48 candidates in our incoming bucket. And Chipra will just talk us through some tips on how to screen efficiently.
Absolutely. So one of the things that we would recommend is for the recruiter to manage applications to keep on top of the volume. As you can imagine, it is the expression of interest. It's a pipeline role, so you will have candidates constantly applying for it. So it's really important to ensure that you review the incoming applications and decline any applications that are unsuitable for any of the positions. So what we would normally recommend doing is set out time each week to do this, so that way you can manage it really efficiently. We would recommend refining the search for incoming applications based on profile, registration, job questions, and also bulk actions as well. So that way you can actually go ahead and screen those candidates faster. What we tend to do sometimes is if we are looking for someone with fashion retail experience, they might be based in Newmarket. So we will refine the search using those functionalities so that we can find those candidates with that relevant experience.
And I think that probably brings it back as well to making sure your questions are right when you're advertising the roles. So as you know, if you're saying fashion retail experience and maybe X amount of years, you have to have that in as a question in order to be able to screen on it. And that screening is valuable, isn't it, Shipra?
Absolutely, 100%. Another thing that you can do is pick list and bucket views that can help you sort applications as well, which is really effective.
Yeah, definitely. I think also thinking about when you're opening your pipeline, as you may find that you get thousands of applications potentially in a really, really short time period. So just making sure that I guess you're geared up to be on top of that screening from the start. As if you're not ready and you've got people on leave or other roles, it's a really busy time, it's probably not a good time to first kind of start advertising your new pipeline.
Absolutely.
And it's definitely not a good look, I guess, for the organization as well, if you've got people sitting in there for weeks without any action on them, or months. So again, and then obviously it becomes a little bit overwhelming for yourself as well to try and keep on top of, and you run the risk of losing some potentially really good candidates as well.
Yeah. And if you have multiple recruiters that are screening on the same pipeline, ensure that you have a shared understanding of the screening out criteria. So remembering that because a candidate who isn't suitable for your location, they still could be suitable for another role as well. So for example, if someone has, they have bad communication skills, you know that they won't be relevant for any of the roles. This is when you will screen them out. But if it's due to because they can't work certain amount of hours, just because they can't for one location, it doesn't mean that they won't be able to be suitable for another role, which has X amount of hours that they can actually meet those requirements.
Or maybe their circumstances change within several weeks or a few months, and then maybe the next time you're recruiting, they're actually available. They may be amazing and they might be available then, and you potentially have a candidate ready to go.
Yeah, definitely. I guess other things that you can do to efficiently screen your candidates is you can perform actions in bulk. So you can select everyone and send them an update email or text them as well. So we mentioned that some of our clients use them for last minute roles. So if it's casual roles that you need candidates really quickly, we've had clients use them for pop-up stores. You could find all of the candidates that are suitable or have selected a certain location, and you could text them and say, call us if you're available to start work on Saturday. And then have all of the candidates that are suitable call you straight away.
It's proven really useful in the past, hasn't it?
Definitely.
SMS is something that we do use on a regular basis as well, because sometimes if you are getting in contact with a candidate and you've left a voicemail, but it's just that you might need their information, it might be referee details. So just sending that quick SMS text as well with your contact number, we've found that it is quite effective and the candidates are more likely to give you a call back as well.
I guess something about a pipeline is that you may not have any roles available immediately, and that is definitely something that happens because obviously it might be for the whole country, and certain locations don't recruit as frequently as maybe some of the main locations. So it is really important to make sure that you keep your talent pool up to date with what's happening. You can set up timed application actions, so you could have maybe a timed application action that sent an email to candidates if they've been in the incoming bucket for more than maybe, I don't know, depending on what your expectations are, but maybe a week or two, and just let them know that, you know, we do still have their application, we will let them know when there's positions available, etc.
You can also use the Candidate Care app as well to alert you to applications that have not met processing time targets. This is really good for if recruiters are noticing that candidates are sitting in one stage for X amount of time. You can set that up so that a trigger will send out to the hiring managers as a gentle reminder so that they can go ahead and process those candidates that have been sitting there for a long time.
Yeah, definitely. The Candidate Care app is available in the Marketplace. So if you've got the Marketplace permission, just click on that. You can find the Candidate Care app. Super easy to install and set up different alerts to let you know if candidates aren't being processed. So you can see here we've got an incoming applications reminder. So if candidates aren't being processed, you'll get an alert. Cool. Did anyone have any questions about screening on the pipeline, or again, you may use pipelines differently. So if you've got any tips that you wanted to share with other people as well, definitely let us know. So if we've done some screening in our pipeline, we've got some candidates, and now we have a specific role that has been opened, we would create a new pipeline child job. So we've got this menu option down here. If we click on that, it'll come up with any pipelines that are on our site. So we've got our call center one and also that customer service roles one that we had created before. If you don't have this option, it may be because you don't have the permission. So there is another permission associated with that option. And that is can create pipeline jobs. So this permission grants users the ability to create pipeline child jobs. The menu option, create a new pipeline name, job becomes available. So you can grant that for recruiters and your managers as well. If your managers have created a job, but it's not actually a pipeline child job, you can convert a standard job into a child job after the fact. So to do that, you would just go other and convert to child job. So again, every site is different with the actions. So you may not have that option available to you, especially if you don't, if you haven't used pipelines before. So that can be something that the client success team can add for you if you don't have that. One really important thing to note though is to check the workflow of the job before you convert it to a child, as you can't change the workflow after you've converted it to the child. So you'd need to archive that job and start again, unfortunately, if it was the incorrect workflow.
One of the most commonly asked questions that we get is, why can't I create a child job? So just making sure that the pipeline itself needs to be in the open status for you to be able to actually create the child job itself.
Definitely.
And then linking the correct child job to the, linking the child job to the correct pipeline if you have multiple pipelines as well.
Absolutely, because once you have converted that, you won't be able to change that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So once you've got your child job created, you'll know that you'll be able to see that it's a child job because it has this little pipe. So when you're looking at a pipeline, you've got a big pipe. When you're looking at a child job, you've got a little pipe. You can also click on the name of the job, and on the job details, it'll say this is a child job of the pipeline, call center expression of interest, apply now. Job seekers from the pipeline will appear on this job based on locations and work type. So for this job that I'm looking at now, we've got location Northland and work type permanent part-time. So any candidates who had applied to the pipeline and had selected Northland and permanent part-time will appear on this child job as a suggested talent pool. So what we mean by that is they appear on the top line. So we've got sort of two rows here. It's quite hard to see possibly as these numbers, the zeros are quite light, but we've basically got two rows, the top line and the bottom line. If they're on the top line, they are a suggested talent pool, and they may also be matching to other child jobs as well. So they're not reserved for your child job until they're either on the bottom line or they're past your pipeline boundary, which is here. So when it turns into one row.
So as an example, you may have a call center team member full-time role in Northland created as well. And these candidates may have said they're open to part-time and full-time positions. So they would be on that top line showing for both of those child jobs. Exactly. And then you need to determine which one you think you would actually try to recruit them for.
Yeah, definitely.
Jess, could you just talk a little bit more about the boundary, please?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So this is set up on your workflow. So this is something that like I said before, if you haven't used Pipeline before, you could potentially use a workflow that you've already got, but we would definitely need to have a chat to you about where your boundary, where you'd like your boundary to sit. Some organisations will do a lot of pre-screening on the pipeline role, so they'll have even things like reference checks and things done on the pipeline before they filter down onto a child. But it's basically where once you've got to the final bucket on the pipeline, then you decide if you want to move them onto a child job. You would move them past the boundary. They would then only be available on that child job, and they would be visible to the hiring manager of that child job. If they're before the boundary on the top line, they're not visible to the hiring manager of that child job.
So that's it. So recruiters generally will manage the initial screening on a pipeline. And I guess in terms of where the boundary will sit, so where the hiring manager potentially will take over, or maybe another recruiter or whatnot, it really is determined, I guess, on your actual setup and your own recruitment process. So, you know, if the recruiter has the ability to take them all the way through, as Jess mentioned, maybe reference checking, and at that point then the manager will choose. You know, that's how you would set it up. So it is sometimes, as in a good practice, as Jess mentioned, is actually maybe contact us first before you start recruiting, and we can have a bit of a conversation to see how we potentially may recommend it might work best for you as well, and just looking at all those different considerations as well before you start recruiting.
Definitely. One thing we do get asked quite frequently is, why is my candidate not appearing on my child job? So maybe you have a candidate that you know has applied for your expression of interest pipeline, and you expect that they should filter down onto your child job, but they're not appearing. So that will be because of either the selections, the category selections on your child job, or the category selections on your job seeker profile. So you can check the job seekers category selections, see what they've selected, and make sure that they've selected the same category selections as your child job. Alternatively, you could edit your child job to select the category selections that the job seeker has. So yeah, just depending on how you want to work that. But if you do one of those two things, your candidate should then appear as a suggested candidate on your child job.
Jess, are you able to touch on the radio buttons as well, please?
Yeah, definitely. Cool, so let's jump into the incoming list, and these are suggested candidates for our part-time Northland roles. These candidates have all selected part-time and Northland. And if I'm processing these applications, so let's say I want to move Fiona to shortlist. So we get this additional option available to us here, and that's because we're using pipelines and child jobs. So it's got some text here. You're performing this action on a candidate in the call centre expression of interest apply now pipeline. Should this candidate be considered for all call centre expression of interest apply now jobs, or only the call centre team member part-time Northland role? So I think it seems quite confusing, but if you read it carefully, it does make sense. So if you want them to just move to shortlist and remain on the top line, you would keep it as this option here, all call centre expression of interest roles. If you want them to move down to the bottom line and only be available for our part-time Northland role, then you would choose this radio button option here. And you'll notice that it actually refreshes the page. And if I click OK, my candidate is now at the bottom, on the bottom line of the shortlist bucket.
Again, I think the biggest thing there is just that once they're moved down, they will only be available to be recruited for or screened on that child job, so only for that part-time Northland position, where you're actually taking them off that main pipeline and their ability to be considered for other roles at this time.
Definitely. So yeah, we probably suggest that you keep them on the top line until you're ready to move them down to the manager. But it is something that some of our clients do use if they know that they want one particular candidate to definitely be considered for this part-time Northland role, but they're not ready to, say, invite them to an assessment centre yet. So they just want to reserve them for this child job. yeah, and process in that way. So I guess another thing we get asked a lot about is, should we advertise, or I guess feedback that candidates prefer to apply for a specific role rather than an expression of interest role. And I guess the general advice is that we suggest you only advertise your pipeline role. But if you do need to advertise your child job, there are ways to do that to ensure candidates are still applying on your pipeline. So one example is we've got our call centre team member part-time role, and I've advertised that on our career site. I've got some additional text at the bottom here. So when you click apply, you'll be taken to our call centre expression of interest job. Please apply and ensure you select Northland as the location you're interested in. You only need to apply once to be considered for multiple opportunities. So if I click apply, that's going to redirect me to the pipeline role, and I need to apply on that one. So the reason you would do that is to capture all of your talent in your pipeline role. If you have candidates applying directly on your child job, they'll appear on the bottom line. So if we go back to our job, any candidates applying directly to your child job will appear below the number 12 here on that bottom line, and they won't be available on the pipeline to be considered for other roles. So if they apply and they're not quite right for the hours of this part-time Northland role, but they'd actually be a great candidate and great to have in the talent pool, if we decline them, that's it. They've been declined and they're not on the pipeline to be reused. So it is definitely better that you redirect your candidates to apply for the pipeline role. And just how you do that is, if I pop into the job details, we've got our candidate button options here. If I click edit, I've actually removed our apply options and we've instead just got a redirect option. So if I click on that, I've got a redirect URL, and that's redirecting me to the job ad for the pipeline.
And I guess the way to kind of talk to the candidates and, you know, get them on board with it is really just explaining that they're potentially limiting themselves. They're giving themselves a better opportunity by applying for the expression of interest to obviously remain in that talent pool. And then, yeah, obviously, if they are genuinely, this is the only role that they want, they have the ability to just select that as an option and they'll be considered for that role as well.
Yeah, definitely. Some of our customers do choose to advertise their child jobs internally. So internal employees get the opportunity to apply directly to the child job. So that's definitely something that you could do if you wanted to. Again, you can just have your employees also applying directly to the pipeline, and then they'll again be available as talent for your future roles. But yeah, that is an option that you can use if you wanted.
You can also advertise a child job on other medias as well, such as Seek or Trade Me, but just use the pipeline advert for the apply link.
Yeah, definitely. Does anyone have any questions about advertising child jobs, or how candidates appear on jobs or anything?
I think one of the things, Jess, as well, just to know, is what recruiters might get met with, I think, is from the hiring manager aspect, isn't it? Where hiring managers want their individual roles to be advertised. And I think just from experience, it is just it's almost a trust me kind of thing. Let me, and as soon as you begin to offer up that proactive recruitment and offer up them candidates as soon as, you know, they actually have a role to apply for, the buy-in is huge, isn't it? And I guess, Shibra, you probably kind of lend to that as well, as you're working quite closely with managers and organizations.
Absolutely. And sometimes it's just, it comes to the education piece as well, where you're just talking to the hiring managers and letting them know what your process is and what you have been doing, so that, you know, they know how many candidates have been screened, and when the time is ready, when we have screened suitable candidates, we will put them forward. So just having the conversation with those hiring managers as well.
Yeah, it just takes time sometimes, doesn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that is a really, really good
point. To work though.
Cool. So I guess another thing to consider as well is when you've moved candidates onto your child job. So in this example, for our full-time Auckland position, we've got 2 candidates in our manager review bucket, and this is the first bucket on our child job. So we've got this functionality or feature called unveiling or veiling buckets. So it is, you probably won't have heard of it before, and it's not something you need to worry about very often, but it is something to consider when you are first setting up a pipeline workflow or using pipelines for the first time. It's basically saying at what point should a candidate know that they're being considered for a child job. So for example, when a candidate's moved into the manager review bucket, we may not tell them that they're being considered for the manager for this particular child job until we know that a manager wants to proceed with them. And that way, if a manager doesn't want to proceed with them for whatever reason, we can decline them off the child job with no message, but they can be available on the pipeline, and it's not a negative experience for the candidate because it's likely that it just wasn't, the hours weren't quite right or something, and they can just be available on the pipeline for other opportunities. So we wouldn't want them to be able to log into their profile on the career site and actually see that they've been put forward for full-time Auckland and then potentially other child jobs that they missed out on. So you can choose to, at what point, let the candidate know that they're actually being considered for a pipeline. And it might be that in this scenario for this workflow, maybe the first interview bucket would be unveiled. So once they're in that first interview bucket, obviously they know that they're being considered for the role. And when they log in, they should be able to see that they're being processed for a call centre full-time Auckland position. Is really important if you do have job seeker raisable actions. So if you're asking candidates to fill in some forms, for example, providing their referee details or something, it is really important that the bucket is unveiled so that they can actually see those actions that they need to complete.
And that's just settings, Jess, as you go to use pipelines again. So again, probably just touching base with our client success team to make sure that's all set up correctly.
Yeah, cool.
One of the most frequently asked questions that we get is, what decline option should I choose?
Yeah, definitely. That is a really key consideration when using pipeline recruitment. It is different to when you're just screening candidates out of a normal role because you do need to consider the fact that they're on a child job, but then they also have a pipeline application, and you do need to consider the experience and the messages that the candidate is receiving. So I've got 2 candidates in the manager review bucket, and say we want to screen out Jessica. So maybe in this scenario, Jessica doesn't know that she's been considered for full-time Auckland call centre role. So I want to screen her out with no message. So again, because we are doing these actions on a pipeline, we get this additional option here, or just additional piece of information. You are removing this candidate from call centre team member full-time Auckland. Do you want this candidate to be considered for other call centre expression of interest jobs? If I select no, the candidate is going to be screened out with no message from the child job and the pipeline. So there may be some scenarios that you do want to do that, and if you're just screening out with no message, you'd obviously need to have a verbal conversation with that candidate so they know that they're not going to be considered for any more pipeline opportunities. But if you do want them to be considered for other pipeline opportunities, you would select yes, and the candidate would just be screened out for this child job, and they would still be available on the pipeline. If you find that is quite confusing, and it is a little bit confusing, it does take a little bit to get your head around it. One easier way to manage this is just to click into their profile and application. So now we're looking at Daniela, and we're looking at her application for the full-time Auckland position. And if I choose to decline her now, I don't get that message pop up. It's because I'm just declining her for this call centre full-time role. I'm not declining her for that expression of interest one. So that could be an easier way for you to manage that if you do find those other messages a bit confusing. Something to think about as well, if you are using decline messages, is to be really careful about which option you select. So if I do want to decline Daniela, but I want to decline her with a decline message. If I selected no, and I want to screen her out from this child job and the pipeline, what's going to happen is she's actually going to receive 2 decline messages. She's going to receive one for the application for the position of call centre team member full-time Auckland, but then she'll also receive one for call centre opportunities, apply now, or whatever my pipeline was called. And that's because she is actually being declined for 2 positions. So you probably wouldn't want to do that. Instead, what you might want to do is decline her no message with no message from the child job, and then find her application on the pipeline and use an email decline for that role, or for that, for the pipeline position.
And sometimes you might have scenarios where you have already interviewed a candidate on the pipeline role, but they are not suitable. So what you would do in this case is you would verbal decline them, and then you would decline no message them from the child job, because again, you've already verbal declined them, so you don't want them to receive another decline email. So that just comes down to the candidate experience as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. So another thing, another feature of pipeline that you may or may not have set up, and especially this is another consideration for if you are creating a new pipeline specific workflow, is setting up a rehire bucket. So once you've got your pipeline open and you've been using it for a while, you may find that you have someone that's been hired on a role. They're an employee, they're really great, but perhaps they're moving. So they want to be considered for the same role, but in a different location. And how do you get them back onto the pipeline? Well, that's when you would use a rehire bucket. So you can see we've got our hired bucket, and then we've got our rehire bucket right next to it. So for this candidate, Melissa, we would use our hired and move to rehire. And you could have other fields on here to capture why the candidate's being moved into rehire if you wanted. We've just got a notes field. So the candidate moves into rehire. They're still hired, nothing's changed about them. They're still an employee, their job seeker status doesn't change. They're still hired in reporting as well. So that's the main reason we've got this functionality, is that you don't need to decline them on the child job, you don't need to withdraw them, or you don't need to do anything else to get them back on the pipeline. This candidate is still hired on this child job, everything in reporting is the same, but they're available on the pipeline to be considered for other roles. So if we went back to our pipeline, Melissa is now back on the pipeline and available to be considered for other child jobs.
So it's really helpful, say for instance, if it was that like a Christmas recruitment, and then come the end of Christmas recruitment, you may have a kind of an exit process interview or feedback or something, you know, anyone that you think would be really suitable or, you know, did an amazing job, you want to keep them on that rehire. So when you come back to your Christmas recruitment next year, you potentially already have a qualified, you know, pool of candidates that have demonstrated that they're, you know, have done an excellent job. Fire them off an email, send them a text message to see if they're still available when next year rolls around. And if they are, great. You've potentially already got a group of candidates to go. You know, obviously some people will fall off and they'll have other roles and they maybe not be available, but, you know, you could still have a really great opportunity there with people that have already worked with you in the past. And then obviously start your process from start with your pipeline.
Yeah, that's a really great example. If anyone has any questions, definitely fire them through. We just had a couple of other things on our list to touch on. One is closing a pipeline. So if you have had your pipeline open for a decent amount of time, so maybe over a year, and you think actually candidates that first applied and perhaps didn't have enough experience or skills to be considered at that point, maybe time has passed where they may actually be suitable now. So we actually want to give people the opportunity to reapply for the pipeline and refresh our talent pool. What you could do is close off your existing talent pool and create, your existing pipeline, and create a new pipeline that then sends out to your talent pool and gives them the opportunity to apply again. It's really easy to mark your job as not visible on your career site, but then to actually move it to closed is a little bit tricky because you do have active candidates who have been processed on your child job. So to actually do that next step of moving it to the closed status, just let our client success team know that you want to do that, and we can help you move that job into that closed status, just to tidy up that last piece. Another thing we get asked quite often is, can pipelines be used if we don't have a central recruitment team? And pipelines do definitely work best when there is recruiters that look after your pipeline, and have that screening perspective of, are they suitable for my jobs across the board, not just for one location or one work type. So it definitely sort of does need that recruiter ability to manage it, but if you don't have that, then just let us know. We can talk to you about how what might work best, I guess. Cool. Did you guys have anything else to add, Shipra and Mel?
No, I guess, yeah, just really retouching on, yeah, just on that, obviously having a recruiter as a centralized work, I guess, as we kind of touched on initially, was we obviously have that SnapHire recruit team that actually do recruitment on behalf of you know, quite a few of our clients, because they don't have that internal resource to manage it. You know, it does take a lot. It's normally quite volume, as Shipra kind of explained in some of those case studies that we talked about. So I'll just let Shipra actually talk a little bit about what they actually do and what they can offer. And as always, do touch base if you have any additional questions as well. So Shipra, I'll just let you quickly just touch on obviously you and the team and what you do.
Absolutely, thank you. So at SnapHire Recruit, we do have the opportunity to be able to have unbundled recruitment options. So we're quite flexible. We have different products and that we can offer. So the idea is to help tailor it according to your needs. So what I would recommend doing is, if you do have a recruitment need, especially during Christmas time or anything, get in touch with us, and we're more than happy to have that chat with you guys further.
Brilliant, thank you, Shipra. So yeah, do touch base with them. As I said, they're a wealth of knowledge as well in terms of how to use pipelines. They have obviously measured what works and potentially what doesn't work for certain organizations, and obviously we work across many different types of organizations in different sectors. So again, wealth of knowledge. If you have any questions, they are more than happy to help, as are our client success team. So if you are looking at or want to explore the option of setting up pipelines, please get in contact. Make sure, obviously, initially we've got those permissions so you actually can create pipeline jobs. But talk to us first just a little bit about how your current workflows are structured. Is it actually going to work? Let's help you get it set up right before you start recruiting for it. So do please get in contact. And obviously, if you have any questions about anything we talked about, just let us know. I know questions tend to pop up, you know, about half an hour after you jump off, or 5 minutes after you jump off a call. So do send them through to us. We'll send out the recording to everyone as well that joined us today. So thank you. And I know some people potentially may have missed, and we'll definitely send the recording out to them as well. And we've got some slides just with those key points that we covered as well. Sometimes they can be just a handy tool as you're kind of navigating through the process, or making sure that you're kind of, you think we've covered everything off for you. If not, do send a question through. I guess you just wait. I don't think there's any other questions that have come through. So hoping we've covered everything, ladies. Anything else that either of you would like to add?
No, nothing else really. If you guys have any questions at all, feel free to reach out to us at any point.
Brilliant. Well, we've just gone a few minutes over. There's quite meaty, the pipelines. There's lots to cover. So look, again, thank you very much for your time today. We really appreciate it. And as always, please get in contact if you have any questions or need any support. Thank you very much. Have a good day.
Have a good day.
Bye.